Hi, welcome to our channel where we discuss how to retire earlier and or better at home or abroad, whatever is best for you. It has to do with your income, it has to do with your savings, it has to do with your expenses, and it has to do with how the economy is doing and how your business and how your activities are going to be doing. And with that thought is why we're going to react to this video today. The worst economic collapse in history is starting right now. Be prepared. Let's take a look.
This is a chart of the 2008 financial crisis. Over the course of 517 days, the stock market dropped by more than 56%. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, and their life savings. It was the worst time for the global economy since the Great Depression. Now this is the 2020 economic collapse so far.
Well, first off, stock market crashes are not new. And when you look at the chart of any crash, they always are going down. The idea that a stock market crash creates this doom and gloom scenario for everyone, let me just say that that's certainly possible. It just depends on what the underlying reason for the crash is. That's the key important takeaway, which isn't mentioned in this video. For an example, personal experience, okay? The 1987 stock market crash was huge. It was a big market crash, okay? That was several decades ago. I was a young man, I was in business, and I was making money hand over fist, I'm not ashamed to tell you. And the business was just going great, and I was on the phone all the time with customers, you know, doing deals on the phone. And I came up to this customer and she says, "Haven't you heard?" "No." "The stock market crashed today or yesterday or whatever." And I said, "No, I haven't heard. See, I didn't know anything about the stock market in the mid to late 80s. And I couldn't tell there was any crash. I was having way more customers than I could handle." And she said, "Well, you shouldn't be charging those prices because the stock market has crashed and people are going to get unemployed, or people are already unemployed, and there's a lot of hardship going on." And I'm just looking around going, I don't know what this lady's talking about. You know, she wanted a deep discount and I wouldn't give it to her, so I didn't get her as a customer. So the bottom line is that I went on to increase my business in the next few years. Of course, the stock market recovered and went to one of the biggest bull markets that you had seen in those days, stock market bull run of the 90s. And so the point is that this video is already starting on, you know, a premise that isn't really, it's just not really there. So while I'm not discounting the idea that this always can be a scenario, clearly there have been scenarios where, you know, things get bad for the majority of people. But even then, it isn't, things don't go bad for everyone. So it comes down to you and how prepared you are and what the circumstances are. There were other stock market crashes also that I never felt, even though I had sold out of my businesses and was no longer running those businesses and was living a simpler, I had downsized my life and to a simpler lifestyle. And even so, I never felt any of the stock market crashes or recessions of the 90s, or even the 2001 recession and even the 2008 recession. Never felt any of them because, personal experience, I had made our household resilient to any of those things. There are ways to do that, and it's just that in good times, most people aren't really willing to discuss that. It isn't something that people normally will entertain as a thought. That is, fortifying your fortress, financial fortress, while things are going well. In contrast to this thought, the video says the worst economic collapse in history is starting now. Be prepared now. So it's trying to call people to be prepared now. Unfortunately, a lot of the aspects of being more stable in your finances isn't something that you can just turn a page and do in 24 hours or even a month. These are things that you need to plan out in advance. Have a strategy and be secure in the idea that you took care of things and things are solid and you're on good foundations, you're out of debt, you have no debt, Your expenses are super low. You could easily cover your expenses even with odd jobs or simple work if you had to, regardless of what category of finances you are at, because depending on how you're invested, you shouldn't be 100% invested in the stock market anyway. The only people that really do well being invested 100% in the stock market are those that retired in the stock market ages ago, and it has run up so much that even if it comes down 50%, they still have way more than they had before. Let's keep going on this.
Of just 21 days, the market has dropped by roughly 20%. The world has seemingly shut down, and we just might be on the worst economic trajectory in history.
All right, now this drop in the stock market has been completely a result of fear, big fear. This is a different kind of fear. A pandemic fear is the fear of loss of life, which is going to be stronger than just, as strong as the fear of loss of money is, the loss of money and life clearly is going to be stronger. So there's a huge amount of fear. You can just look at the velocity of the drop, meaning the expansion of the bars, when you look at the chart, is much larger than a lot of other drops. So and the thing about that is, though, to put things in perspective, is the stock market has seen one of the greatest and biggest and long-running bull markets in its history. We made a video in the past, when times were good, discussing this very subject, and that is consistent with what I just told you, that the time to take care of your household and your financial fortress is not when you're in the middle of the drop. It's way before. Yes, we made that video, and for those of you that watched that video and paid attention to what was being discussed, made plans and stuck with them, you're not falling prey to these kinds of fear-mongering. Clearly it's sensationalist. Look, the stock market crashes. The U.S. economy is based on booms and busts. We've had money panics for over 100 years in the United States. I just want to point out the sensationalism and how it's just a day late and a dollar short, and we should be taking care of our households and our financial fortress way before any kind of video like this comes out and way before any kind of crash. All right, so further in the video, he discusses the interconnectedness of the quote-unquote global economy and how the USA is really quite dependent on Chinese manufacturing, and how this new virus has come around and shut everything down, the whole world, and how because of the fact that the majority of the manufacturing is in China, when they shut down, guess who else shuts down? Well, it's 2 + 2 = 4, isn't it? I've got a couple things to say about this. One of them is that one of the best videos on this virus that has come out lately that cuts through all the fear-mongering and all that is this video right here. And it just comes to my mind that clearly in business, the results that you get from the decisions that you make are what dictates whether you were making proper decisions, meaning that to be so dependent on a foreign country for your manufacturing, maybe that was just a strategic error, huh? And the thing to say about that is this, that the brilliance of the current presidents, this is not a political video, I'm not going there, not choosing sides or any political thing like that. I'm just saying the brilliance of the current president, where he was in advance of all of this scare and that has broken out with this virus thing, right? Where he was removing the USA's dependence from Chinese manufacturing. He's been doing this since he got in. So how brilliant was that? That's what businesses should have been doing, and this is what you should be doing if you're in business right now. So all this is, it's a catalyst for American businesses to be self-sufficient like they should have been in the first place. Amazing that your current president had the foresight to see that situation and was started to take care of it from day one. So that's a great thing that got started, And so what really needs to happen is you just need to do more of that. And he uses words like almost and certainly in the same sentence, which is it's like saying wet and dry. What is almost a certainty without the almost, what it is a certainty is that after the economy has been booming for so many years, you have to expect a slowdown. That's just part of the deal in North America. That's just the way it is with a fiat economy and a loan-based and consumerist-based economy.
Downturn to the one that we are seeing today was probably the recession of 2001, except the one that we're going through today is on a much larger scale. You see, in 2001, there was a rapid drop in stock prices after a half-decade-long bull market. There was also a crisis that slowed down the world's economy, which was 9/11, and there was a temporary ban on air travel in many countries throughout the world. Now, these aren't the exact same as to what we're seeing today, but it is the most comparable recession in terms of causes.
Well, hold on a second. He forgot to mention the bankruptcy of one of the biggest brokerages in the USA and the fact that they were gambling with derivatives. So, that's a big thing to leave out. And that was part of the crash. That's what that was part of it. So, yes, every single crash has its own catalyst, and every single economic slowdown has lately some kind of an industry that just, mismanagement or whatever you want it. But, this virus, this sickness situation is just a catalyst. What it comes down to is some of these other industries is how tight is their financial ship? How much debt are they running? How much hanky-panky are they engaging in, with their, stock prices? And, a lot of these companies are really big companies. Sure, I don't want to minimize that a lot of people work for them, but ultimately, even for those that work for these large companies, they may not have control really over how these companies are run. But these people do have control. You do have control over your own household and how you run your financial ship, and whether you're on solid foundations or not. All right, so then he starts talking about how there's more people in debt and how this slowdown is going to really hurt some of these industries that are not going to be able, again, to pay their debt. So it has a denominator here where it's talking about people and companies that are in debt. And yes, debt is a killer of families, households, and businesses. You shouldn't be in debt. You should get out of debt. Never mind what you see on social media and what you hear people telling you that, yes, it makes more financial sense to be in debt because the stock market is paying more than the cost of your debt. Those are just numbers. They don't really tell you the complete picture, especially in a scenario where the stock market is dropping and you can't pay your debt. Unfortunately, he goes on to say that he wholeheartedly supports the bailout of some of these airlines that may go bankrupt. I say unfortunately because on the one hand he says that it's not based on mismanagement, it's based on just a sudden health scare. Well, I mean, yes and no. If it's why aren't the other airlines going bankrupt? Why aren't the other companies going bankrupt? The answer is the same thing we've been discussing: too much debt. Because when a company or a family and a household is run properly with surpluses, tightening your belt if you have to, when you have to, making solid plans, avoiding debt, these kinds of sudden things don't have to put you out of business or put your family on the street. I know. I've been through several of them and barely even felt. Most of them didn't feel them at all, and one of them, business slowed a little bit, but it didn't cause any change whatsoever in my lifestyle. So it is possible, it is correct. What I'm telling you is based on personal experience and a long time, study and interest in the subject.
Because it's due to an unpredictable change in traveling laws and regulations and not due to the incompetence of the industry. In fact, if you want to know how bad airlines are getting hit right now, take WestJet, for example. They're a fairly big airline with 14,000 employees, but they are expected to lay off between 20 and 50% of their flight attendants in the next few weeks if air travel does not return back to normal. There was actually an internal memo sent to the WestJet union that said, "Our airline's well-being has become grave overnight."
All right, key point. Using this particular airline as an example, when you go look into it, you find that this particular airline has 1.4 billion long-term debt and 1/3 of a billion short-term debt, with their shareholder equity being only 1.8 billion. So the majority, almost as much as their equity, is what their debt is. So, that's a really dangerous level, and obviously and clearly, it is mismanagement. Contrary to what you're hearing in this video. This is why I like to react to these videos. I react to these videos when I find something that stands out to me and says to me, wait a minute. So it's like saying that, let's say that your monthly income is $18,000 or $1,800 and your debt is $1,400. And your short-term debt, that's just your debt, not even your operating expenses, not even your bills that you pay. That's just your debt. $1,400 as compared to your $1,800 per month, or $14,000 in debt is compared to your $18,000 income. So clearly it isn't leaving much there just to even pay your bills. Okay?
The impact on our operations, and expect the government to help airlines and travel companies weather these extraordinary circumstances. And as I mentioned earlier, the airline industry is not the only industry getting hit right now. Of course, you've probably heard about a lot of the other shutdowns, like the businesses that involve large gatherings of groups of people. These are the businesses like the NBA, NHL, MLB, MLS, concerts, comedy shows, conferences, and much more. And even though each one of these businesses is much smaller than some of the bigger industries that we've already talked about, having all of these industries take a hit at the same time will begin to add up in ways that you don't think about.
All right. Fair enough, good point. I mean, yeah, if all these industries, all the weak players, the ones in too much debt, in the too much debt camp, they all get hit all at once, yeah. Guess what? Hello, recession, right? That's the catalyst, was the bad news. It brings things down. The people in debt, the weak players, get knocked out, and then they go to the taxpayers to cry for a bailout. What's new? Have we ever heard this before? So if you're an employee and you work for one of these major corporations, the takeaway from this should be that you should go look at your corporation's debt ratios. And I'm not going to make an intricate video about math and finances. So to keep things simple, I'll just say this. If the company is hit with something like this, how much cash on hand do they have to pay short-term debt? And how much cash flow, if they don't have the cash flow coming in anymore because of something that happens unexpected, how big is their payout for their long-term debt? Can they pay their bills? Okay, and if this goes on for a year, can they pay their bills? And if the answer is no, you better start looking for another job, because you are going to get laid off. And that's how you prepare. You prepare for this if you're an employee by understanding your employer.
Well, this early data is pretty terrifying. Let's take the restaurant business, for example. So there are apps like Resi and OpenTable which are used to book tables at restaurants, and they're reporting that covers are down between 30 and 65% in areas like New York and Washington. And this one really hurts me personally, because picture all of the mom and pop local restaurants and businesses that are just being able to get by and pay the bills, and all of a sudden this disease outbreak happens and they might go out of business because everyone is staying at home. So all of these points represent the case for an incoming recession.
Yeah, anytime you shut the whole population down, of course these industries are going to get hurt. But all that does is it reinforces what is being said in the video I'm calling the best video on the health scare of this age, of this year. The best video, we'll put the link in the comments. So all it does is reinforce the ideas put forward in that video, that it is not clearly sustainable to just shut everything down. Of course, if you shut everything down, then everything will be shut down, including your finances. The next thing he talks about is how, in order to avoid a big collapse of the market and the banks, when you've got a system based on paper money, which is called fiat, paper money, and how banks make loans out of thin air and this kind of thing, that's all a different subject. There's going to be kinks in the system somewhere, and things can, monkey wrench get thrown in and things can crash. But again, that's just part of the recurring picture of the United States of America. It's been going on, it's nothing new. You just have to be cognizant of your own history, folks. The thing is that with businesses, there's going to be mismanagement, there's going to be weak businesses and strong businesses, and whenever these kinds of slowdowns come around, the weak hands fall into the stronger hands. So this has always been the case throughout history, and whenever, even in the big crash of 1929, the strong hands were able to acquire the weaker hands. It's just part of the way things are. This is common knowledge. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've already known these things, and you certainly have and should have plenty of time to prepare and plenty of time to rearrange your affairs so that you're not so dependent on this concept of the economy, to where when a crash actually comes, it doesn't really change your lifestyle, and it actually in some ways makes things easier and better because a lot of things become cheaper. I'm not minimizing hardship on families, but it comes down to personal choices and personal decisions that people make, and there are consequences for those personal choices and personal decisions that people make. So it's pretty clear to me that somebody got paid to make this video by somebody that is being talked about in the video. Guess who it is on both sides? I see right through these videos. Hopefully with my help, or these videos, if you didn't see right through it in the beginning, I've helped you see something. So in summary, be careful. We live in the information age, as I like to call it, the misinformation age. So be careful out there what you're watching, what you're listening to, and always, it's all about consider the source. And if you stuck with me through this whole video, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.